Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. We have had workshop catch-ups in the past where we look at sort of jobs that are ongoing and where they're up to and all that. And a while ago we featured this car in the workshop catch-up, one of the episodes, and this is the gold Miura where we changed the front end. We've done a complete nut and bolt, ground up restoration on this car. It arrived in a pretty sorry state from the eastern seaboard of the US. And nothing against anybody over there, it's just the fact that it was ready for a complete restoration. We've had to source some bits that were missing, we've had to remake a lot of parts for it. But the interesting part of any restoration is actually how long it takes to turn all the bits you've taken off, restored, put back together again, back on the car, and then test it afterwards. It can take up to 20% of the restoration time to actually shake down and test and tighten up and adjust and make an assemblage of nuts and bolts and bits of leather and paint into a proper working car. And I'm actually far more interested in the car's drive, if truth be known, than how they look. Of course, they've got to look fabulous. You know, second best just won't do when you're talking about cars worth north of £1 million. But I'm very interested in the way the cars go. They've got to drive properly, and I've got to be able to drive them hopefully as hard as any customer ever will, which means that I've got to put them through their paces when they're done. So this car has been through the complete restoration process here, and we're now just doing the final tweaks and bringing it really into life as a machine of action and of intensity as its creators originally intended. So just going to have a little look at the final tweaks and actually the fruits of our labours, if you will. This isn't just a look at a car in pieces in the workshop. This is actually doing the final stages and tweaks of bringing it back to life and getting it to work and sing properly. So I hope you enjoy it. Well, here we are on the road, and it's always a novelty driving cars like this for the first time after we've done literally a ground up restoration. This car's been on the Rotisserie. James has made a new floor for it because the bottom half of the car was absolutely rusty beyond repair. So we've done that. Every last nut and bolt has been restored on the car or replaced. We try to restore things if we can rather than just blanket replace them, but it's just a question of building up confidence on the road and actually bringing the car slowly to life. The steering wheel isn't straight, so we need to reset that. But it feels as though it's tracking okay, suspension feels good, there's no knocks or clunks. Engine's behaving itself okay, I've already tuned that. It's running well on 12. Oil pressure is about 7 kilograms per centimetre, 6 or 7, which is fine. At this sort of speed, about 2000 RPM. Water temperature and oil temperature okay. It's gradually coming to life. We have static run the car in the workshop, but it's just, you know, this car is worth well north of £1 million, and it's just, I take the responsibility of driving it, nursing it back into being a capable supercar again very seriously. You've got to respect these things. At the end of the day, this is a 50-year-old car that is capable of nearly 180 miles an hour, and that's not to be taken lightly. Yeah, it's all good at the moment though. Brakes are just bedding in, I'm just treating those super lightly. Engine's good and strong. We have done some running in time with the engine, so that's pretty well not far off being bedded in now. Pick the right day for it. It's absolutely glorious today. It seems very happy at the moment, very happy. Yeah, brakes are feeling a bit better. They're just still pulling slightly to the left, but they're new pads, just need to bed them in. I'm driving Miss Daisy at the moment in this car. But it's really responding well. I'm very, very happy. Pulling cleanly. Just see how it corners. Yeah. No strange noises. All sorts of things can happen. Wheel balance weights can hit brake calipers. I mean, the list of possible things is endless, really. I perish the thought that any more serious than that happens. But it really is just a gradual voyage of discovery, gaining confidence. They do sound absolutely glorious, these Miuras. Just an absolute knockout sound. I always think of it as a very big motorbike engine with all its gear trains and one unit construction. I'll just pull over and make a couple of notes on my phone while they're fresh in my mind. I have come into the 21st century. I now make notes on my mobile phone as opposed to a notepad. Steering wheel not straight. And we have to compensate for the fact that being a left-hand drive car, it's going to end up in a country that drives on the right. So I know how much to compensate, just with experience really, to make sure that the wheel is straight when it's on a camber facing the other way on the other side of the road. These things matter. Brakes, well, we'll check them over again, but I think it's just going to be miles that need that. I noticed the speedo is not quite working right, so we'll do that. Other than that, sounds great. Idling as smooth as you like. Although it is a responsibility, and although I have to, my senses are all on overload for the slightest thing going wrong, the slightest noise happening, the slightest brake binding, anything that could be damaging or dangerous, it is still a wonderful place to be. I mean, there's no room in a Miura, but we just accept that. Bob Wallace, I'm 6 feet tall. Bob Wallace, the New Zealand test driver for Lamborghini, who developed the Miura essentially, with Paolo Stanzani and Gianpaolo Dallara, he was 6'2". The original Miuras were built smaller than this, very slightly smaller. I have no concept of how he fitted in those cars. It's really very snug in here. But yeah, I mean, I'm beginning to relax. I'm beginning to be at one with the car. I'm beginning to trust the car. We'll just check the synchro on second. Yeah, lovely. I'm deliberately not double declutching. I'm letting the synchro mesh do the work in the gearbox. You have to be very firm with this gear change because it takes a tortuous route. It goes right through the engine block and out the other side to change the gearbox within the block casting. Very complicated bit of engineering, quite tricky to get right. I'm just going to slowly open it up now. I did double declutch that time, force of habit. Yeah, that was about 4,000, 4,500 revs. Yeah. Yeah, the car's just coming to life. Everything's settling down. We need to spanner check everything. All the suspension pivots, all the shock absorber, all the damper settings, everything. around the engine as well, make sure that's as oil tight as a 50-year-old V12 can be. But this is really good. I'm very, very happy with the way this is coming to life. Well, one of the things I did notice when I was out on road test is a particular area of the Miura which can be troublesome, and that's the gear change. I was really sort of almost fighting with it to get it back into neutral on occasion. So I brought it back in, we put it on the lift, we're going to send it up now and we'll have a look at what's causing that. The gearbox is very tricky on a Miura. It runs across the back of the engine in the same casting, and the gear change rod that actually works the gearbox, which is there, comes right through the cylinder block, right through the engine, from the front to the back, from the gear change on the center console. And that's what determines, it moves up and down and side to side, and that's what determines what the selector shafts running across the back of the engine do. It's a very, very fiendish and complicated system, but it does work on a good day. Needless to say, the mechanism isn't 100% precise and super feather light like a normal front engine rear wheel drive traditional gearbox, but it does do the job. So we're just going to have a look at why the gearbox isn't precisely working between the gears. Incidentally, this gearbox has got 6 synchro meshes on it. So synchro mesh came in the very early 1930s, synchronized meshing. Change gear from one to the other. You don't have to double declutch, as it's called, to get the speed of the gears to match so they don't crunch when you change from one to the other. Lamborghini not only were ahead of the game by having a 5-speed gearbox, like very few other manufacturers in the mid to late 1960s, but they also were the only people to have synchromesh on reverse. So when you put the car into reverse gear, it didn't crunch. That was the levels that Ferruccio was prepared to go to, Ferruccio Lamborghini, to make his cars as refined as possible. So this was the only car with full synchromesh on all gears, all 6 gears, for some considerable years after it was first done. Started off on the very early Lamborghinis, 350 GT, 400 GT, when they started making their own gearbox. This is an adaptation of that system. So I'm just going to ask Marcus to actually work his way through the gears. He reckons he's solved the problem, this selecting problem, but I'm just going to ask him to do that. So Marcus, you're still alive in there? Yeah. Oh, good. And would you just do the honours, please? Okay, fire away. Yeah. 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 Is that going all the way in? There it is, yeah. Right, can you put it back into neutral now with that? Yeah, and is it moving freely? So are all the selector rods returning to neutral when you work it through the system? And you think that was just simply tightening up that thing under the gear lever, do you, that's solved that? The pinch bolt on the selector rod. Okay, well it certainly seems to be working now. Just try it again. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, reverse, and then back to neutral. Well, they're all springing back into the central position nicely. So that was the tiniest of things. So it could well be that that's all it was. I mean, that was potentially a big worry, because I had visions of having to take the entire gearbox apart again, which is an engine out job. So that is a huge relief. This is the sort of thing we encounter when we first do miles in these cars. We bring them back to life, and just a little adjustment here and there, tiny tweak can make the world of difference. It really can. So I'm very, very happy with that. That saved a shed load of work. Well, it's really difficult to see this, but under here, this is the base of the gear lever assembly here. There is a shaft that runs, as I say, from the gear lever right the way through, right through the engine to that transmission selector box at the back. And there is what's called a pinch bolt that clamps a sleeve round a shaft here, and the pinch bolt was actually loose, which was causing the two to just slide slightly against each other. So it's been properly pinched off now, it can't move, and that has bought us the tiny bit of extra movement that we needed to make the whole thing work properly. Incredible, but good. Another thing that I noticed was that the starter motor is not fully engaging every time I go to start the engine. So again, this is a particular Miura problem that can occur. The starter motors go directly into the crankcase in the engine. They're actually immersed in oil, the pinion, the end of the crank of the starter motor. It's not immersed, it's actually swimming around in the oil system by the transfer gears. So we're going to just have a look at that as well. Again, a common problem on Miuras. Well, this is another Miura engine that we've got here, and it's actually upside down. So the cylinder heads would go here and here, bottom end, crankshaft here, and the starter motor fits in here. Now, normally starter motors are not immersed in oil, but this one is. You've got oil all inside this transfer housing. It's sealed off inside with the engine and gearbox, depending on which Miura it is exactly. But this oil's splashing around and it gets in the nose of the starter motor here, which is not ideal. And what happens is, the starter motor, there's an O-ring in there, which is only fitted on this starter motor, a rubber O-ring, and that's supposed to stop the engine oil from splashing right inside the motor. And it doesn't work. And what happens is these get filled up with oil. Literally, you've got a swimming pool of oil in there, and the starter motor eventually just smokes and packs up because it's full of oil. This is a common problem on Miuras. It's just one of their design faults. And unfortunately, the O-ring on this motor is faulty, so we're going to have to replace it with another new one, or it's been nipped as it's been fitted, one or the other, and we're going to have to clean it out and pop it back on the car. Well, what I'm going to do with the steering wheel is in the wrong position, but rather than start removing the steering wheel and trying to reposition it on a different spline on the column, I'm going to use a trick of the trade, and I'm actually going to wind one track rod slightly shorter on one side and slightly longer on the other to pull the steering wheel across and get it more like where it should be. Well, we've been back to the workshop and we've just done a couple of tweaks here and there. We've straightened the steering wheel. I've guesstimated as to where it should be, which is just about right now. And yeah, it's not too shabby at the moment at all. In fact, I'm going to open it up a bit more on this straight now. See how it goes. Yeah, that Italian supercar magic is very much there. I would even go as far as to say I'm beginning to enjoy myself. And my trust in the car is building up. I feel more secure in the car now, that nothing's going to fall off, fly through the bulkhead, overheat, seize, brake, do something it shouldn't. Yeah, all good. Oh yeah. Now that we've done those little adjustments, this car is it's becoming a Miura as opposed to a mobile test bed. Yeah, very happy with this. Woo! Well, here we are, back in the car, and everything's looking good. We've been round the suspension, making sure nothing's about to fall off or undo itself. So what I'm going to do now is just begin to open the car up a bit, stretch its legs. It's a tough day in the office, but somebody has to do it. Joking apart though, it is quite a responsibility, because I have to make sure that the car is good to go for the owner when they drive it, presumably not slowly. You don't buy a Miura to go to the shops in, do you? Although stranger things have happened. But oh yeah. Yeah, it feels great through that left-hander there. We'll just try it through this one. Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. I'll open it up now on the straight, see what we've got. Yes! A happy Miura! If it's happy, I'm happy. And that means that the owner is going to be delighted when he gets it back. How fabulous. So satisfying to do this work. Yes, we get problems, things go wrong, but when it's right, it's right. Well, I have to say, I've got confidence in this car now. It's like a relationship of trust. You know, you go in very cautiously at first and see if you like the look of things, and yeah, it takes a while for me to trust that this car will actually look after me and not throw a bucket of cold water over me when I try and push it. Let's give it another go. Oh yes, very, very happy with that. It's pulling up now, the brakes, it's tracking really straight. Brakes are pulling up dead square and have lots of lovely feel. Gearbox is behaving itself. The whole car is just behaving itself super well now. It's a joy to drive. The initial test miles are an ordeal because you're super sensitive. As I mentioned earlier, you're almost in overload, sensory overload. But I can just relax a bit now and enjoy it and savor the moment, really. How lovely. How lovely. How satisfying. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. It's a slightly terrifying but satisfying part of the process at the same time. If you have, please like, please subscribe, please share, and we'll be back with something else soon.